Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is just a quick preview for Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall. Goes down this weekend on the 26th of February, takes place in Glasgow, Scotland, televised on Sky Sports in the UK and ESPN in the USA. Now, going into this fight, it's basically viewed as a routine title defense for Josh Taylor. Of course, Jack Catterall is WBO mandatory. And yeah, Josh Taylor is expected to win this fight comprehensively, if we're being honest. But I am looking forward to it. It's not often you see an all-British fight involving undisputed, so that's a good look. Both guys, of course, are unbeaten. Jack Catterall is an unproven commodity, no doubt about it, but we'll find out on Saturday what this guy has in the tank. Of course, I'm picking Josh Taylor to win this fight. I would say by late stoppage, maybe even on points, but I'm leaning towards a late stoppage for Josh Taylor. So there's no doubt in my mind that Josh Taylor wins this fight. It's more so how he looks doing it. Ever since this fight's been made, I've had this nagging suspicion, and it's not really based on anything, but I've had this nagging suspicion that Jack Catterall is going to have more success than people envisage. I get the impression, and maybe I'm wrong, I get the impression that Josh Taylor, his team, Top Rank, etc., they're basically treating this as a homecoming for Josh Taylor, and I wonder whether they are taking Jack Catterall seriously. Because if you don't, I think Jack Catterall is the type of guy who can make a fighter look bad. If you look at Jack Catterall, now first and foremost, both guys are southpaws. But one thing about Jack Catterall, he's a guy who likes to fight at his pace. He's pretty good at managing the contest in that way. He'll kind of draw a guy into fighting his sort of fight. He can mix it up, he can be somewhat aggressive, he can be standoffish, boxing behind that lead hand out of that southpaw stance. He's got pretty underrated lead hand control, and he does a very good job of stifling his opponent's jab. He's a pretty accurate counterpuncher, in particular with his left hand. He's got a looping left hand counter and also a straight left counter, which is pretty effective. Carries okay power. He's pretty methodical, Jack Catterall, but he does all of the basics well. He's got good timing, he's got a pretty good understanding of distance, and he's just competent across the board. He can fight across all ranges. The inside, he can really shorten his punches well. He can fight at mid-range, he can fight at long range, and he can counter, etc. So he's a well-rounded fighter. He doesn't really do anything special, but he looks after himself. He's well schooled. And that's the sort of guy where if you've got your eye on another prize, or you're not fully focused, I think he's the sort of guy who can make you look bad. Because Josh Taylor, at times, he would be seen as a bit temperamental, a bit hot-headed, as Jack Catterall would say. And I do wonder whether he's taking Jack seriously, because if he's not, I mean, I could see Jack making it a bit awkward for Josh Taylor. Now, of course, I'm picking Josh Taylor to win this fight. He's the much more experienced guy. He's fought a much higher level of competition. He's bigger, he's longer, he's heavier, he hits harder. He's more skilled in my opinion as well. I think Josh Taylor is better than Jack Catterall in most departments, or pretty much every department. But it's not to say Jack Catterall is a bad fighter. So I'll be interested to see how these two guys match up, and more importantly, I'm interested to see the tactics of Jack Catterall. Is he going to try and back foot box this one and try to be evasive and lead Josh Taylor onto a big shot? Make Josh Taylor be the aggressor. He's at home, of course. He's going to want to put on a show. Can Jack Catterall utilize that to his advantage? Be a bit standoffish, frustrate Josh Taylor in the first couple of rounds, and then make Josh Taylor chase this fight and try and walk him into that left hand, which he utilises well as a counterpunch. I do wonder how Jack's going to approach this one. I think that's what he's going to try and do. I think he'll try and draw the sting out of Josh Taylor early on, frustrate him, and then try to make Josh Taylor play up to the crowd and really chase this fight. And essentially he'll try and walk Josh onto some big shots. I can't see Jack outboxing Josh behind that jab. I can't see him outfighting Josh on the inside. Quite frankly, I can't see Jack winning this fight, but if he were to win it, I think he would need to walk Josh onto a hell of a shot. You know, a shot that Josh just doesn't see coming, or he's not ready for, that sort of thing. So yeah, I expect Jack in this fight to be negative early on, and then he'll try to adopt the style of a counterpuncher. Whereas I think if that does happen, if Jack is negative early on and he defends well, makes Josh look bad, I could see a scenario where Josh is starting to get a bit frustrated and he's taking more risks than he'd probably like to. And if he does that, that's where Jack has his chance. And I think that's what will happen early on. I've got a feeling Josh is going to get frustrated early on. Not saying he's going to lose rounds, but just not look too great. He'll then kind of fall into Jack's fight for a couple of rounds where Jack is actually having success with his left-hand counter, and also he's got a really good check right hook out of that southpaw stance. I could see Josh walking onto shots in rounds 3, 4, 5, and I think eventually what's going to happen, you'll see Jack Catterall start to deplete, start to get broken down, and Josh will use his size, his power, his strength, and his inside fighting to really break down Jack Catterall and probably stop him late. Again, Jack is good technically, but one thing about him, his feet aren't bad in terms of footwork, but his feet aren't quick. So I wonder. I think he's going to have a hard time keeping away from Josh this whole for all 12 rounds. He might do it early on, but I can't really see him maintaining that throughout 12 rounds. And yeah, eventually I think you'll see Jack get broken down by Josh, and more than likely you'll see a late stoppage in favour of Josh Taylor. But I think it's going to be a more tricky fight than people imagine. I really do. But having said that, more than likely now, Josh is going to go in there and knock him out in one round. Who knows? But it's a fight I'm looking forward to. It's good to see Josh Taylor back in the ring. He's always good value. Undisputed champion, of course. He's done great things in the last couple of years. Britain's best boxer by a country mile, in my opinion. Forget about Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, etc., etc. Josh Taylor is the man in the UK, no doubt about it. So I'm looking forward to this fight. We also have on the undercard, interestingly, Robeisy Ramirez. He was obviously a 2-time gold medalist for Cuba. He's fighting Eric Donovan at featherweight. You know, I expect Ramirez to win this fight, but Eric Donovan, he's a bit of a step up from Ramirez's last couple of fights. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to see Ramirez back in action. But I would say Ramirez more than likely stops Donovan late, maybe wins on points, something like that. You've also got a low-level heavyweight fight between Nick Campbell and Jay McFarlane. Now, I've seen both of these guys fight, and quite frankly, neither one of these guys is all that great, to put it politely. But put these two guys together, you could get a fun little heavyweight scrap. Nick Campbell is the bigger dude, whereas Jay McFarlane maybe is more aggressive naturally. Put these two guys together who don't really have much technical ability. It's probably going to be a good fight. And on the undercard, you have a whole heap of prospects. Bilal Fawaz, Paddy Donovan, who's quite a good prospect. Watch out for him. John Doherty, he's on a comeback trail. He recently lost to Jack Cullen, so watch out for him. And yeah, you've got a few guys on the undercard, but we shall see. But the undercard's not the strongest, I can't lie. But yeah, the main event is pretty solid. 2 unbeatens going at it. All British, undisputed fight. What's not to like? And it's good to see Josh Taylor have a homecoming because, he's really put in work in recent years. He really has. And I still don't think he's got the respect that he deserves from UK boxing fans. Maybe if he was flipping tables and doing this, that and the other, maybe he'd get more support, but he's a tremendous fighter, Josh Taylor, and I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, share your thoughts below. It's Beanie Guy Delboy. What do you think of this card? Tell me below. Peace.